Welcome to our series where we discuss the latest real estate trends with Canada's most prominent business leaders, asking better questions to help build a better working world. This is REImagining Real Estate. I'm William Yeager, a partner at EY Canada. In my role, I explore the newest real estate trends influencing the country's largest industry and ask the better questions that keep us ahead of the curve. In this episode, I speak with Mazyar Mortazavi, President and CEO of Taz Impact, a leader in community-focused real estate development. Maz, it's great to see you, and thanks for being here with us today.
Great to be here. Thank you, Will.
So in recent months, Taz has continued to invest and expand its portfolio for new multi-unit residential. But with current market conditions, how does your approach change, if at all?
It's a great question. I think that our focus has been on investing through a generational lens, and so we're not looking to sort of acquire and exit. We're looking to acquire, develop, and hold. And with that sort of emphasis, the underwriting has changed. Those elements have changed, but we're also sort of seeing shifts in the market in the way that we're acquiring. We're sort of seeing shifts in the market in terms of some costing. Still early days, but that doesn't really change that focus for us. And it's really deeply tied to our impact focus. And as impact investors and sort of impact leading, we're looking at sort of the way that we drive that impact. And so our measurement is both on the ROIs that we're delivering, but also in terms of the impact framework and what we're measuring for the impact side of our equation. And so by bridging those two pieces together, our ability to look at the assets with a far sort of longer consideration in the timeline has allowed us to continue being quite active in the marketplace.
So regarding market expansion, how does Taz Impact identify markets and properties for investment that may fall outside of your traditional markets?
It's a great question. I think the one thing that has differentiated our approach has always been that we've never had our standard market. We are constantly looking at the drivers of demand being sort of correlated to demography, looking at sort of what are the sort of what we term as the socio drivers. So the socioeconomic, sociocultural, the shifts that the market is that are taking place in the broader sort of dynamics of a marketplace, which then ultimately drive the demand. And so that has been sort of an underpinning part of what we do. And we're continuing to take that approach. And so as we look to enter into new markets, we're actually looking at what are going to be the future demands in that marketplace. And when they're going out of our GTA geography, it's often with partners, both partners who are inviting us into deals and looking at doing deals with us, and or us identifying sort of partners with a shared value set that allow us to partner together in sort of expanding into those marketplaces.
So do you see or envision diversification or consolidation of assets across the industry in the coming year?
Listen, I think that's a lot of the things that we're seeing in the market today are part of a continuum around a trend that we've been seeing overall. We don't see this as sort of being a reaction to, but the current this current marketplace catalyzing more quickly some of the inevitable changes that were happening. With the changes in the kind of workplace environment, with growth demand as it relates to the industrial and manufacturing sectors, we're seeing the consolidation happening from a general use standpoint. And we see that as actually being quite important through our impact lens as we talk about building long-term resiliency. And the fact that the integrated components actually help drive the long-term resiliency as it relates to the accessibility of the cities that we live in. And we talk about accessibility in the sense of how do we make places more financially accessible? How do we make them more functionally accessible? How do we think about city building in the context of providing and provisioning for the mix of uses that are complementary to one another, and ultimately, by bringing those functional sort of elements together, create for a better place to live?
So what are some key initiatives that Taz Impact is doing specific to ESG and sustainable investments, and how important is this to the company?
Well, I'll start answering the question in reverse. That is what we do. It's not it's not a new add-on. It's not sort of a vogue sort of consideration for us. We've been in the impact investing space for 15 plus years, and it's been central to how we think about our business as being foundational. We position ourselves as a company that's driving profit and purpose, and it's not a choice. It is what we do, inherent to everything we do. Our impact strategy is actually set out in our impact framework. We have three core areas of focus around our impact, around environmental sustainability, affordability and equity, and social capital. We actually measure for all three of those elements across our portfolio, and we actually issued our first impact report earlier this summer. And that's something that is paramount for us, because in order to be able to actually deliver on impact, it only happens when you've gone to the point of measurement. So the measurement elements are really, really critical for us. We don't take a generic approach to our projects. We sort of identify impact opportunities asset by asset. We set those out in the same way that we set out our performas. We define sort of the goals that we have, and then we measure against them over the project lifecycle. And so the impact piece is central to everything that we do. It's done through measurement, and we're delivering the profit and purpose by combining the two together.
So Maz, how do you plan on being opportunistic in the next 3 to 5 years?
We've always been opportunistic. I think that, that's our view on this marketplace. I think, the opportunistic element of it is really sort of anchored back to us, or for us, as it relates to the depth of our governance, the strength of the foundations that we have, and the readiness to actually take advantage of the opportunities that present themselves. And so for us, we continue to believe that the housing market will be very, very strong in the Canadian context. We're quite bullish on it in that regard. We also do believe that we're seeing fundamental shifts away from ownership into long-term rental. It's the inherent nature of the affordability challenges that we have. But we also see a huge opportunity around reframing shared equity and looking at the alignment of value creation to the sharing of the equity between the various stakeholders across a project. And so how do tenants begin to actually participate in the value creation through equity participation, as opposed to, them assuming the liability of the rents that they pay and the landlords being the sole beneficiary of the value that's created. And so we see a significant opportunity as it relates to sort of a paradigm shift in how we think about tenure, but also how we think about sort of shared equity. And so to us, there will be great opportunities in that segment, and we're quite well poised to not just take advantage of them, but lead in that space.
How does TAS Impact's investment strategy affect your view on the economics of a project? Explain to us how impact investing affects project economics, generally speaking, especially given that it has become part and parcel for nearly all investors today.
No, it's a really great question. I would sort of say it is at the crux of the whole ESG impact conversation. We're, as I mentioned, we're not altruistic about the work that we do from an impact standpoint. We're not doing this in the absence of profit. We've been strong believers that when the impact strategy of an organization is clearly articulated and set out, it actually creates the opportunity for impact alpha, and we can generate better returns and stronger returns. To the core of the question, as it relates to decisions around assets in the context of the impact strategy versus the financial returns, I would say, one, for us, there's many assets we pass on because we actually don't feel like we can deliver an impact with those assets. They just become sort of merchant transactions. And so those are just not a fit for us, and we pass on them. The ones that we do take on, because of the fact that we're accounting for the impact and for the financial returns out of the gate, we're able to align the desired outcomes and sustain them over the project lifecycle. And that, I would sort of say, is probably what fundamentally differentiates the way that our team operates and how we actually are able to sort of sustain those outcomes over project lifecycle versus the value engineering that sort of kicks in and often takes out where the impact would be made.
Okay, so last question for you. Any advice for residential real estate companies as they navigate a tumultuous economy in the months and years ahead?
I would really encourage my colleagues to shift the lens from real estate as commodity to real estate as generational asset. When you look at it from a commoditized standpoint, the undulances that we're seeing in the market become sort of catalytic in an adverse or negative side. Whereas if you think about the assets with a generational lens and what you're trying to achieve with them, it begins to open up opportunity, and lead to a very different set of considerations in how we underwrite and evaluate the assets we want to sort of engage with. And if we can introduce this idea that impact, whether it's financial impact, social impact, or cultural impact, when you combine those returns together, they begin to show new opportunity. And it's the pursuit of those new opportunities that creates sort of the path ahead in these turbulent times.
So Maz, thank you so much for being here with us today. I found the discussion very, very insightful.
Great to be here, Will. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for watching Reimagining Real Estate. Be sure to watch the rest of the videos in our series where we continue to ask better questions to help build a better working world.